Today's discussion, we are joined by Malik and Nazahim, an associate of Frontier Research. Good evening and welcome to the program.
Good evening, Prashant.
Okay, so let's start off by having a bit of an introduction and discussion about the global commodity prices.
Currently, when we take a look at the global commodity prices, we see an increasing trend. This is due to the volatility that we've seen globally. So when you take a look at the last year or so, last few years or so, like following the pandemic, the prices have been moving upwards. For example, the oil prices, and then once the pandemic actually was played down, we saw the Russia's invasion of Ukraine, which helped push the prices up again, and that has been the trend, and it has been increasing throughout. When we take a look at the 5-year or 6-year range, we see that commodity prices are on the increasing trend these days. Another important thing that we have to look at is China's reopening after their zero COVID policy. So China, with their zero COVID policy, China has a big market with their large population and all, right? So we see that once China reopens, there's a splash of demand. So people tend to move out of the country, they start to purchase products from out of the country and all, and this creates more demand on global commodities. So this excess demand also is a reason for prices moving upwards.
Right. And what's the situation of inflation like when it comes to a global standpoint?
Yes, so this has been an issue globally. So following the 1970s was like last where globally we had like really high inflation, and the oil prices were like really high, increasing, and following that was when inflation targeted systems were introduced by central banks. So these systems actually were focused on mitigating the inflation and reducing the prices to having them controlled. So now globally we see that as we know, the US Federal Reserve is leading the inflation mitigation process with a target of 2% of inflation. So they are planning to bring it down to 2%, and this is followed by other central banks as well. Since US leads indirectly, it leads the financial system. The European banks as well are increasing their rates to target their inflation and to bring it down. Mainly because Europe is also doing this, mainly because the invasion of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. The reason is that Ukraine and Russia are great commodity exporters. When it comes to wheat, oil, and also they are in an important position even when it comes to the supply chain process. So this is a bit of a headache for the European nations.
Right.
So that is what even their central banking policies are moving towards to mitigate inflation.
Okay.
And mostly this would be supported by increasing rates, and the rates have been increasing in central banks, even in the US. And now the views, global analysts that they have is actually their opposing views.
Okay.
But at the beginning, unanimously everyone accepted and everyone anticipated rates to rise, but now the views are mixed.
Okay. Now, how have these global prices impacted Sri Lanka during this time of depreciation?
Yes, actually the depreciation of the Sri Lankan rupee, and when you take what happened in the global markets, like the latest volatility, it happened at the same time, like the one of the most important incident and the depreciation of the Sri Lankan rupee. So we all know that the Sri Lankan rupee was pegged at a value at around 200 rupees for a long time, at around the 220 marks, right? And many people called to unpeg the dollar, to unpeg it and all, but it took time. So at this point, when it came to around March, we could remember in 2022 how times were, with extensive power cuts, long fuel queues, queues for the LPG gas cylinders, LP gas cylinders and all. And this was a time when Russia actually invaded Ukraine, and that spurred how do you say, a big negative sentiment around the globe.
Okay.
Because this was a global political issue which was running from 2014 onwards, right? So it was like, you know, you say the tiger is coming and the tiger didn't come.
Yeah.
And once the tiger comes in, right, it becomes, you don't know what to do.
Exactly.
So that's what happened in last year. So when the rupee depreciated, and with the sentiment of with the global sentiment or negative sentiment, prices rose rapidly, and we weren't able to import fuel and other necessary commodities that we needed for consumption. This is mainly due to the dependency that we have on imported goods as well. We were a community that had been or have been dependent on imported products. As an island nation, it's pretty common to be dependent on imported goods. So that has been Sri Lanka's trend when the depreciation, the large depreciation happened last year. Also, what we could see is that since the import controls and all, right, with the depreciation and with the government policies coming in place, there are a slight what do you say, there are slight vision of the habit, consumer habit, and of consuming to have changed.
Okay.
From your daily consumption, the proportionate of imported goods that you have is reducing, and people are moving towards locally produced, domestically produced goods.
Right.
And that's visible as well.
Now, what are the factors which generally depreciate or appreciate the currency?
Yes. So mostly it comes with the sentiment as well. So a positive sentiment, when you have a really positive sentiment on the economy, capital and cash flows in. People are sure about the country. They are sure that, okay, the country is doing good, and you know, there is a chance for them to get their returns and to not have to lose money. So sentiments play a big role when it comes to appreciating or depreciating a currency. And other things such as interest rates and prices in general also have an impact on the currency depreciation or appreciation. So for example, if prices in Sri Lanka actually rises as it has, we have seen the currency to depreciate drastically. And this is what we see. So mostly from my personal view, what I would say is that the sentiment or the view that you have on a macroeconomy is what defines more of the appreciation or depreciation.
Okay.
Other than that, when you look at the capital inflows, if Sri Lanka as a country is attracting more dollars through investments or other possible means, it factors into the depreciation of the currency, the appreciation of the currency.
Okay.
Whereas let's say that there is more instability in the country and the macroeconomy, and then investors and big companies decide to move out of the country, it would cause the currency to depreciate more.
Right.
So another thing that we could see recently is that, right, on the sentiment aspect, is how a panic sets in into an investor. So when, for example, if you could remember, when the currency depreciated from around 200 to 360 rupees per dollar,
Right.
People actually started hoarding the currency, and they were expecting for more returns. They were expecting the currency to depreciate even further. So this actually kicks into the depreciation even more. So it overshoots. So you call this an overshoot. So for example, if the currency is appreciating, the opposite happens.
Okay.
So people tend to see, okay, the currency is falling, and it might fall, it might drop even further. So maybe I should change my money into dollars right away.
Right.
So to gain a profit. So that is some of the that is how sentiments generally affect the appreciation or depreciation of the currency.
Okay. Now, what are some of the things that you feel like the general public can do to help with this situation?
Yes. So the important thing is, I would say, is for the general public is to wait and see, and not to panic. As Sri Lankans, I think generally we panic too soon when we check the news. Right. And when we see a negative news, and actually media in general plays a huge role on how the message is conveyed to the public. So even the current appreciation that we are facing, media has a role to play as well, with the IFC's 400 million currency swap facility that has been given to 3 main banks in Sri Lanka, and with the governor of the central bank being really positive on how the discussions with the IMF is going on and all. It gives a positive message to the public as well, and they tend to gain more trust on the system.
Right.
So these factors into the appreciation as well. So as public, this is what we need to be aware of as well. When there is a negative news or a positive news, I think we should be have more patience in handling these situations.
Right.
Also, when you take a look at prices in general, right, and when prices increase, or when prices are like rapidly increasing and when there are shortages that we have experienced in the past, and maybe if we experience it in future as well, due to restrictions, which I don't think is probable, but if it happens, it is very necessary for the public to not get into hoarding goods and panic buying as well, because it affects, it actually adds more damage to the wound that we have as an economy.
Right.
So for example, if you are buying one shampoo bottle, and when the price increases and you understand and you get a WhatsApp forward message saying, okay, shampoo bottles are not there in Sri Lanka, you would try to get 10 to 15 shampoo bottles on the next go, right?
Yeah.
And this sets in the panic buying behavior. So then what happens is that the next 14 individuals who probably would have bought the shampoo bottle loses their consumption.
Right. Okay.
So that's really important for the public, as their behavior generally also plays a role in how these goods are provided.
Okay.
Another factor that I could tell about, and which I actually like from a personal point of view, I actually find it good, is the fuel quota system that we actually came up with. Probably a bit late that it was implemented, but we understood that it literally erased the queues that we had for a long time.
Right.
And this is how systems work. When there are shortages, you ration goods. So now I think we feel our pockets really well, and we understand the purpose of using 20 liters per week and all. So I think such systems also help the public to be more aware on what's happening.
Right. Well, thank you so much for that insight on the market. That was Malik Nazahim, an associate of Frontier Research. Thank you for being with us this evening.
Thank you.